Hello, I'm Shirley. If you're new here, welcome. If you're not new here, welcome back, my beautiful friends. And today I thought I'd give you the long-awaited update on what happened when I met my narcissistic ex. Before I share what happened, I just want to say thank you so much for all your words of encouragement and support and protection. And I know that you really care about me and my welfare, and I really truly appreciate that. And I also want to take this opportunity to answer a few of the questions and the concerns that you had. Although there were a few outbursts from him when we were together, whereby he kicked the sofa and shouted a little bit, he was never really violent. It was more a lot of mind games and gaslighting and making me feel and speaking to me in a way that really brought my self-esteem down over the 5, 6, 7 years that we were together. There were times when I looked at him when he said something and I thought, you're a bit crazy or psycho, but you don't say that to people who's got so much control over you and your life. So I never said those things to him, but there were red flags now that I know what the red flags are. Because I was meeting him at the storage facility, there is literally a camera at every angle, and even where my actual unit is just above the office. So if there was anything that would happen, they would hear, and I'm sure they'll come and find out what's going on. So I was never fearful about my safety when I met him. The other thing I know that you're concerned about is you've said that I should just give the box to my son and he can give it back to him. And for me, that is more of a risk, because then it opens up the opportunity for him to speak longer with my son. And the reason that I prefer that not to have happened is because my son and the rest of my family really don't know what he's like. Although I got a couple of comments about my last video on this topic about I shouldn't really have put it up and blah blah blah, I don't really want to think about that now. I am really glad that I did, because it opened up the opportunity for me to think about my part and how I felt about the situation. And it made me realize that I have no dependency on him in terms of finances or anything to do with my welfare. It made me realize that, you know what, you haven't got any hold over me. You've got no power, and I don't have to be afraid of you anymore. And that was a really strong thing for me to have found out before I met him again, because I knew that I didn't have to be afraid of him anymore. When I received his message to ask whether the meeting was still on, and it was probably about 8 o'clock in the morning, because I read the message before I went down to make my coffee, I was really thinking about how to reply and say good morning. And when I went back upstairs to read the message again and reply, I noticed that it was just, hi, is the meeting on today? And it was really curt and short. And what disappointed me about myself was, here was a person that had so much power and control over my life previously, and I was thinking about how to greet him in a nice way, as though he was a friend. And that made me realize that, you know what, Shirley, there's still some attachment to this person. Or maybe it's just me being the kind person that I am, that I always think about being courteous to people. So it's something that I know that I've had to think about and be aware of, and to solve or sort out within myself. So when it came to the meeting, he was already at the storage facility by the time I got there, and he was in his car, and I noticed that he had the laptop open and working, because I think it was a Wednesday lunchtime, so he would have been working. And I sort of wasn't sure what to say, so I walked up to his car. He pulled the window down, and all I said was, "All right." And in all honesty, I can't even remember what I said. I don't think I was that interested, or maybe my anxiety just made me shut out what he had to say. So we exchanged a couple of greetings, as you do, and I knew that I didn't want him to come upstairs to the actual unit at all, because I didn't want him to know which one it was. Not that he would have been able to do anything, but I just didn't want to share any information whatsoever. So I said, "Oh, I'll bring the box down." And he said, "Is it a big box?" And I just told him it's just your normal storage file box that you get. So he said, "Okay," and I just went upstairs, and I have to be honest that when I got up there, I did take a few minutes to take a few deep breaths and just center myself a little bit. So maybe I was a bit more anxious than I really thought. And I picked up the box, locked my storage unit up while I was downstairs, and just took it down. And when I got down to the car park, he'd got out, and I thought he would come and take the box from me, but no, he just got out of the car, opened his boot, and that's the point that he took the box from me. The really funny thing was, in the position that he took the box from me, so he would have had his right arm facing me. And the really funny thing was, he'd folded his sleeve up just so he can reveal his new, well, what looked like an expensive watch, because he doesn't wear cheap watches. I think the cheapest thing that he'd probably worn is a Fitbit that I bought him for one of his birthdays, and I'm not sure whether he expected me to comment on his watch, but he made it clear that he'd flash it to me, and I did see it, but I just chose to ignore it because that's just who he is. He did try to make some sort of conversation, and he asked me, "Is this where you live now?" And I said, "Yeah." The other lucky thing that made me glad that I'd put up the previous video was when I did a bit more research and I came across a phrase called grey rock or something like that, where you speak to someone but you don't go into an animated or extended conversation. You keep the answers short and factual without getting involved in what's happening. So I basically grey rocked him when he said, "Oh, is this where you live now?" And I said, "Yeah, sort of." And I did sort of give a brief explanation of how I got to be where I'm living now, because it wasn't such an important information that I felt I could have answered, and not give too much of the information of what's currently happening in my life. He asked about my daughter, and is she okay now after her illness and health issues that she went through. And that really surprised me, because she had an operation at some point towards the end of last year, and I'm really surprised that he knows about it. So it really annoys me that he's still trying to stay in contact with my family after everything that's happened, and what's the point, you know? So that really grates me a little bit. I think part of the reason he's doing that is because he is probably missing the admiration and adulation, that's the word I'm looking for, that they used to give him, because he's in a good job, well respected, and it pays him well, and he puts up a really good front of being kind and caring and generous and stuff like that. So maybe he's missing that from not being with me. I did ask him a question that basically confirmed my suspicions, that something he said last year that confirmed that he was lying about it. After he inadvertently revealed a lie, he'd said that, oh, I'm just traveling a lot with work at the moment and blah 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 blah. It's the usual stuff. He did travel a lot even when we were together, but I think part of the travel that he did was just to go and see this new supply. And there's a part of me that thought, I bet you're missing the stability that I gave you when he used to travel away. I would be obviously at home and he'd have his meals cooked and make sure that he was comfortable when he got back, and that he had the comforts of home that you'd want if you've been traveling for days and you want to come home and you want to relax in a comfortable home and have a meal and hot drink and things like that. He offered to give me a lift somewhere, but I thought, no, there's no way I want to spend any more minutes sitting with you in a car. So I just pretended that I had to do a couple of things in the storage unit, and that was that. And I know from what I've talked about here, it sounded like it went on for a while, but in reality we probably spoke for about 5 minutes, if that. So that's the update on what happened with my meeting with the narcissistic ex. Even for me, I thought it was a bit of a damp squib and there's no excitement. But I guess it's better that way than anything else that may have happened. This is why I look a bit of a mess, because I'm going to go to the gym, and I'll see you in the next video.